The shuttle was falling apart around him. Daniel Cole gripped the controls with white knuckles as warning lights flashed red across every screen. The engine had failed 20 minutes ago, and now he was dropping through the atmosphere of a planet he had never planned to visit. His research mission was supposed to take him to the moons of Nine. Instead, he was going to crash on Prime, a world marked dangerous on every star chart he had ever seen. He pulled hard on the emergency thrusters, trying to slow his descent. The ground rushed up to meet him through the cracked viewport. Purple forests stretched in every direction under twin suns that burned orange and white in the alien sky. Daniel braced himself as the shuttle hit the tree line and everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, smoke filled the cabin. He coughed and crawled toward the emergency hatch. His body ached from the impact, but nothing seemed broken. Years of training had taught him how to survive crashes, how to roll with the force instead of fighting it. That training had just saved his life. Daniel kicked open the hatch and stumbled out onto soft purple grass. The air was breathable but thick, heavier than Earth standard. Gravity pulled at him harder than he was used to. Every step felt like walking through water. He turned back to look at his shuttle and his heart sank. The ship was destroyed beyond any hope of repair. Flames licked at the hull and black smoke rose into the sky. He checked his equipment. His translator device still worked. His medical scanner was cracked but functional. He had a small survival kit with food for 3 days, water purification tablets, and a basic first aid pack. No weapons. His distress beacon was damaged, and he could not tell if it was transmitting. He was alone on a hostile world with almost nothing. Daniel knew he had 2 choices. He could stay with the wreckage and hope someone came looking for him, or he could move and try to find help. The smoke from his crashed shuttle would attract attention, but he did not know what kind of attention. The species that lived on this world were known to humanity only through distant observation. They were called and they were warriors. Every report said they tested strangers through combat. Those who failed died. He decided to move. Staying still felt like giving up, and Daniel Cole had never been good at giving up. He followed a river downstream for hours. The purple forest was dense and filled with sounds he did not recognize. Strange birds with 4 wings watched him from branches, small creatures with too many legs away from his footsteps. The twin suns moved slowly across the sky, and Daniel wondered how long the days were on this world. By evening he saw smoke rising in the distance, not the black smoke of his crash but the smoke of cooking fires. A settlement. He moved carefully through the underbrush, keeping low and quiet. When he reached the edge of the forest, he stopped and stared. A village stood before him, built into the side of a great cliff. Stone buildings rose in tiers up the rock face, connected by bridges and ladders. Fires burned in iron braziers along the walls, and everywhere he looked he saw warriors. They were tall, taller than any human. Their skin was covered in dark green scales that shimmered in the firelight. Each one had 4 arms, 2 larger ones and 2 smaller ones closer to their chests. Their eyes glowed amber in the growing darkness. They wore leather armor decorated with bones and feathers. Every single one of them carried weapons. Daniel knew he should be afraid. He was afraid, but fear would not save him. Only action would save him. He stepped out of the forest and walked toward the village gate. The response was immediate. A horn sounded from the walls. Warriors poured out of the gate and surrounded him in seconds. Daniel stopped walking and raised his empty hands to show he carried no weapons. They formed a circle around him, 12 warriors with spears pointed at his chest. One of them spoke in a language of clicks and growls. Daniel's translator struggled to keep up, catching only pieces of meaning. Outsider, soft skin, test, worthy. Before Daniel could respond, the warriors raised their spears, not to stab him, to throw. Daniel understood in that moment what was about to happen. This was their test. This was how they judged strangers. He would either prove himself or die on this spot. The first spear flew at his head. Daniel did not think. His body moved on instinct, years of martial arts training taking control. He bent backward and the spear passed over his face close enough to feel the wind. The second spear came from his left. He twisted sideways. The third came low and he jumped over it. Time seemed to slow down. Daniel's senses sharpened to a point. He could see each spear as it left the thrower's hand. He could track the arc of the throw, calculate where it would land, and move his body out of the way. Sweat poured down his face. His muscles screamed with effort, but he kept moving. 4 spears, 5, 6. He dodged them all. 7 and 8 came together from opposite sides. Daniel dropped to his knees and the spears crossed above him. 9 grazed his shoulder but did not draw blood. 10 he caught on his forearm and deflected away. 11 he spun away from at the last second. The 12th spear was thrown by the largest warrior in the circle. It flew straight and true, aimed at his heart. Daniel watched it come. At the last possible moment, he stepped to the side and let it pass. The spear buried itself in the ground behind him. Silence fell over the village. Daniel stood in the center of the circle, breathing hard, surrounded by 12 spears stuck in the earth. Not one had touched him. Not one had drawn his blood. The warriors stared at him with wide amber eyes. Their expressions shifted from hostility to something Daniel had not expected. Shock, confusion, and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginnings of respect. An old warrior pushed through the circle. His scales were faded with age and scars covered his body. He walked with the careful dignity of a leader. When he reached Daniel, he stopped and studied the human with ancient eyes. The translator picked up his words clearly this time. In all my years, no outsider has ever dodged the 12 spears. You are either blessed by the gods or cursed by them. Either way, you have earned the right to speak. Daniel lowered his hand slowly. His heart was still pounding, but he kept his voice steady. My name is Daniel Cole. I am a human. My ship crashed in your forest. I mean no harm to your people. I only seek help. The old warrior tilted his head. His amber eyes narrowed as he considered the strange creature standing before him. A human, he repeated as if testing the word. We have heard stories of your kind. Soft bodies, no claws, no scales, yet you move like water through stone. Daniel did not know how to respond to that. He simply nodded and waited. The old warrior turned to address the crowd. This one has passed the trial of arrival. By our law, he has earned temporary shelter. He will stay until we decide what he truly is. Some of the warriors grumbled, but none challenged the decision. The circle broke apart and Daniel was led through the village gate. He had survived the first test, but as he looked around at the fierce faces watching his every step, he knew many more tests were coming. The old warrior's name was. He led Daniel through the village while curious eyes followed them from every doorway and window. Children with small scales and bright amber eyes peeked out from behind their parents. Warriors stopped their training to stare at the strange, soft creature walking among them. Daniel kept his head high and his pace steady. He knew that showing fear would only make things worse. Brought him to a small stone building near the base of the cliff. It had one room with a sleeping mat on the floor and a window that looked out over the village square. 2 guards took positions outside the door. Daniel was a guest, but he was also a prisoner. He understood the difference. You will stay here, said. Food will be brought to you. Do not leave this building without permission. Daniel nodded. May I ask questions? Considered this for a moment. Then he sat down on a stone bench near the window. His old joints creaked as he moved. You may ask. Whether I answer depends on the question. Daniel sat across from him. The trial of arrival. What happens to those who fail? Most die, said simply. Their bodies are burned and their ashes scattered to the wind. Those who survive with wounds are given a choice. Serve the village as workers or leave and never return. And those who pass completely, like I did. His amber eyes studied him carefully. In 300 years of my life, I have seen thousands take the trial. hundreds of outsiders from other tribes, dozens of criminals seeking redemption. None have ever dodged all 12 spears. You are the first. Daniel let that sink in. So you have no law for what I am. No, admitted, you are something new. The council will meet to decide your fate. Until then, you wait. A knock came at the door, called out, and a young warrior entered carrying a tray of food. Behind her came another figure, taller and fiercer than most. This new was female, Daniel realized, though her scales were just as thick and her muscles just as powerful as any male warrior he had seen. She wore armor decorated with more bones than anyone else in the village. A leader. This is, said, commander of our warriors. She has questions for you. Did not sit. She stood over Daniel with her 4 arms crossed, looking down at him like he was an insect she might crush. Her amber eyes burned with suspicion. How did you do it? Daniel met her gaze without flinching. Do what? The spears. No creature moves that fast. No soft body bends that way. You use some kind of trick, some human technology. No tricks, Daniel said. Just training. Where I come from, we learn to fight from a young age. We learn to move our bodies in ways that seem impossible until you practice them for years. Made a sound of disbelief. You expect me to believe a creature with no scales, no claws, no natural weapons could dodge 12 spears thrown by our finest warriors? Daniel shrugged. I do not expect you to believe anything, but it is the truth. Looked like she wanted to argue more but raised a hand. Enough. He will be tested again in time. For now, let him rest. Gave Daniel one last glare and then left the room. Her footsteps echoed angry and heavy down the stone corridor. She does not trust easily, said. None of us do, but has more reason than most. The killed her mate and took her sister's children in the last raid. Daniel's attention sharpened. Our enemies. His voice grew heavy with old grief. They are a faction that broke away from our people generations ago. They live in the poison marshes to the east. Every season, they raid our settlements. They take our young ones and we never see them again. Why do you not fight back? Daniel asked. You are warriors, your people are strong. Turn to look out the window. The poison marshes are called that for a reason. The air there is filled with toxins that kill our kind within hours. Our lungs cannot filter the poison. We have tried many times to reach their fortress. Every warrior we send dies before they get close. Daniel pulled out his medical scanner. The screen was cracked, but it still worked well enough to analyze the atmospheric data stored in his survival kit. He had scanned the local air when he first crashed. Now he searched for information about the marshes. What he found made his heart beat faster. These toxins, Daniel said slowly, they are deadly to you, but my kind evolved on a planet with much worse air. Humans survived in cities choked with smoke and poison for generations. Our lungs adapted. Stared at him. What are you saying? I am saying the poison marshes might not kill me. I could survive there. Maybe long enough to reach the fortress. Was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You would do this. Risk your life for children not your own, for a people you just met. Daniel thought about the question carefully. He thought about the little faces he had seen peeking out from doorways. He thought about rage and pain. He thought about what kind of person he wanted to be. Where I come from, he said finally, we do not need a reason to protect children. We just do it. Rose slowly from his seat. His old bones creaked, but his eyes shone with something new. Hope, perhaps, or wonder. I must speak with the council. This changes things. He left Daniel alone in the small stone room. Daniel ate the food that had been brought, strange meat and stranger vegetables that tasted like nothing he had ever known. Then he lay down on the sleeping mat and stared at the ceiling. He had just volunteered to walk into a death zone for people who might still decide to kill him. It was either the bravest or the thing he had ever done. Probably both. Sleep came slowly that night. Daniel dreamed of poison mist and children crying in the dark. The next morning returned with news. The council had met through the night. They had argued and shouted and threatened to come to blows, but in the end they had reached a decision. Daniel could attempt the mission. If he succeeded, he would be named Aran, a warrior born of another world but bound to their people forever. If he failed, his body would be left in the marshes and his name would never be spoken again. There was one more condition. Appeared in the doorway. Her face was hard and her posture rigid with anger. She would not look directly at Daniel. "The council has decided that I must accompany you," she said through gritted teeth, "to observe, to witness whether you succeed or fail." Daniel stood and faced her. "I would welcome the company." His amber eyes finally met his. "Do not mistake this for friendship, human. I do not trust you. I do not like you. But if there is any chance of saving those children, I must see it with my own eyes." "Then we leave today," Daniel said. Placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. 4 fingers gripped him with surprising gentleness. "May the ancestors watch over you, human, and may you prove worthy of the hope we place in you." Daniel nodded. He gathered his meager supplies and walked out into the morning light, fell into step beside him, silent and suspicious. Together, they passed through the village gate and began the long journey east, toward the poisoned marshes, toward the children who waited to be saved, toward a test that would prove once and for all what kind of creature a human truly was. They walked for 2 days through the purple forest, set a hard pace, pushing through dense undergrowth and climbing steep hills without rest. Daniel kept up, though his muscles burned and his lungs ached in the heavy gravity. He refused to show weakness. He knew she was testing him, looking for proof that he was not what he claimed to be. On the first night, they made camp beside a stream, gathered wood and started a fire while Daniel filled their water containers. When he returned, she was sharpening one of her 4 blades, the firelight dancing across her scaled face. "You move well for a soft creature," she said without looking up, "but movement is not fighting. Tomorrow we spar." Daniel sat down across the fire from her. "If you wish." She looked up then, her amber eyes catching the flames. "I need to know what you can do. If we encounter scouts, I need to know whether to protect you or leave you behind." Daniel did not take offense. Her words were harsh but practical. She was a commander responsible for completing a mission. She needed to understand her resources. "Fine, we spar at dawn." They ate in silence and slept in shifts. Daniel took the first watch, sitting with his back against a tree while strange sounds filled the night. When woke him for his turn to sleep, she said nothing, but her expression seemed slightly less hostile than before. Dawn came with pale light filtering through the purple leaves. Daniel stretched his tired muscles and faced in a small clearing. She had removed her heavier armor and stood in just her leather underlayer, 4 arms loose at her sides. "No weapons," she said, "hand to hand only. First to yield loses." Daniel nodded and raised his guard. Moved first, fast as lightning. Her 2 larger arms swung at his head while her smaller arms reached for his throat. Daniel ducked under the high strikes and twisted away from the grab. He countered with a palm strike to her ribs, but she blocked it easily with one of her free hands. They circled each other, attacked again and again, using all 4 arms in combinations that should have been impossible to defend against. Daniel dodged what he could and blocked what he had to. He landed a few hits, but nothing that seemed to hurt her. Her scaled skin was like armor. After 10 minutes, they were both breathing hard. Neither had gained clear advantage. "Enough," said, stepping back. "You are skilled, more skilled than I expected." Daniel wiped sweat from his face. "You fight like nothing I have ever seen. 4 arms is a significant advantage." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We are born for battle. Every learns to fight before they learn to speak. Yet you, with your 2 soft arms and your breakable bones, you held your ground against me." "I trained for a long time," Daniel said simply. They continued their journey. As they walked, began to speak more freely. She told Daniel about her people, their history, their ways. They had been warriors for as long as anyone could remember. Honor in battle was their highest virtue. Cowardice was punished by exile. Death in combat was considered a blessing. And the Daniel asked. His expression darkened. They were once our brothers and sisters, a faction that believed honor was weakness. They broke away 3 generations ago and claimed the poisoned marshes as their territory. Now they raid our villages, steal our children, and vanish back into the mist. Why do they take children? To raise as their own, to train as warriors without honor. The children forget their true families. They become in heart and mind. Her voice cracked slightly. My sister's 2 young ones were taken in the last raid. They were only 5 summers old. Daniel felt a cold anger building in his chest. How many children are held there now? Our scouts believe 9. 9 children from different villages, all taken in the past year. All waiting to be twisted into something they were never meant to be. They reached the edge of the poisoned marshes by midday on the 2nd day. The change in the landscape was sudden and dramatic. The purple forest simply ended at a wall of yellow mist. The air smelled wrong, sharp, and chemical. Even standing at the boundary, Daniel could feel his throat tighten. Stopped several paces from the mist. Her scales had already begun to change color slightly, taking on a sickly tinge. This is as far as I can go. Any closer and the poison will begin to destroy my lungs. Daniel checked his medical scanner one more time. The readings confirmed what he had suspected. The toxins were similar to sulfur compounds and industrial pollutants found in the worst human cities during the dark ages of Earth history. Dangerous but survivable. Maybe. He pulled a cloth from his pack and wrapped it around his nose and mouth. It would not filter everything, but it would help. Grabbed his arm with 2 of her hands. Her grip was strong but not painful. Why are you doing this? You could leave. You could find another way off this world. You owe us nothing. Daniel looked into her amber eyes. He saw fear there, fear for him, and it surprised him. Maybe that was true 2 days ago, but I have seen your village. I have seen the children playing in the streets. I have seen parents holding their young ones close and checking the sky for raiders. Those 9 children in there have families waiting for them. They have lives waiting for them. I cannot walk away from that. Released his arm. Her expression was unreadable. Humans are strange creatures. Daniel smiled behind his cloth mask. So I have been told. He turned and walked into the yellow mist. Behind him, watched until he disappeared completely. Then she sat down at the edge of the marsh and began to wait. Inside the mist, Daniel moved carefully. The ground was soft and treacherous, ready to swallow his feet if he stepped wrong. The air burned in his lungs despite the cloth covering his face. His eyes watered constantly and his head began to ache. But he kept moving. He followed the direction had given him, navigating by the position of the twin suns when he could see them through the mist. Hours passed. The poison worked at his body, making him dizzy and weak. But his lungs kept working. His heart kept beating. Where any would have died, Daniel Cole walked on. By evening he saw it. A fortress built of black stone rising from the marsh. Crude but strong, with walls thick enough to stop any attack. Guard towers stood at each corner, manned by warriors wearing primitive breathing masks. They had adapted to the poison, not through biology but through technology. Daniel found a hiding spot in a thick cluster of marsh plants. He watched the fortress through the mist, counting guards, nodding patrol patterns, searching for weakness. After an hour, he found what he was looking for. A drainage tunnel at the base of the eastern wall. Water flowed out of it, probably waste from the fortress interior. The grate covering it was old and rusted, and most importantly, no guards watched it. Daniel waited for full darkness, then he moved. The grate came away with some effort, the rusted metal breaking apart in his hands. He crawled into the tunnel, gagging at the smell but pressing forward. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but it led upward into the fortress. He emerged in some kind of storage room. Crates and barrels lined the walls. Daniel crept to the door and listened. Voices in the distance, rough and harsh. Footsteps passing by. He waited until the sounds faded, then opened the door and slipped into the corridor beyond. The children were held in the lowest level. That was what the village scouts had reported. Daniel moved through the fortress like a shadow, using every skill he had ever learned to avoid detection. Twice, he had to hide in dark corners while guards passed. Once he had to take a different route when he found a blocked passage. But finally, he found them. 9 children huddled in a large cage. Their scales were dull and their eyes were empty. They had been given food and water but no kindness. They did not look up when Daniel approached. Until one small girl noticed the cloth tied around his arm. The cloth had given him before he entered the marsh. A cloth marked with the symbol of her village. The little girl tugged at the others. Her whisper was barely audible. "That mark, that is our mark, he comes from home." 18 amber eyes turned to look at Daniel. Hope flickered in them like flames catching on dry wood. Daniel knelt beside the cage and began to work on the lock. "I am here to take you home," he whispered. "Be ready to run." The lock was old but sturdy. Daniel worked at it with a thin piece of metal he had found in the storage room, feeling for the mechanism inside. His hands were steady despite the poison still burning in his lungs. The children watched him in silence, barely daring to breathe. A click, the lock opened. Daniel swung the cage door wide and gestured for the children to follow. They moved quietly, trained by fear to make no sound. The oldest was perhaps 10 summers, a boy with dark green scales and serious eyes. The youngest was the girl who had recognized the village mark, no more than 4 or 5. Daniel counted them as they filed out. 9. All 9 were alive. He led them back the way he had come, through the dark corridors and into the storage room. The drainage tunnel waited, a narrow path to freedom. Daniel pointed to it, and the oldest boy understood immediately. He helped the smaller children into the tunnel one by one, lowering them carefully into the darkness below. Daniel went last, pulling the grate back into place behind him. It would not fool anyone who looked closely, but it might buy them a few precious minutes. The tunnel was even harder with 9 children. Some of them cried softly from fear. Others stumbled on the slick stones. Daniel moved back and forth along the line, helping those who fell, encouraging those who froze, carrying the smallest when her legs gave out. The little girl clung to his neck with all 4 arms and buried her face against his shoulder. They emerged from the tunnel into the marsh. The yellow mist swallowed them immediately. The children started coughing as the poison touched their lungs. "We must move fast," Daniel said. "The air will hurt you, but it will not kill you quickly. Stay close. Do not stop." He set the pace, fast but not so fast that the children could not keep up. The oldest boy helped manage the group, counting heads and making sure no one fell behind. Together, they pushed through the marsh toward the boundary where clean air waited. They were halfway there when the alarm sounded. A great horn blew from the fortress behind them. Shouts echoed through the mist. Torches appeared in the darkness, dozens of them, spreading out in a search pattern. They had discovered their prisoners were gone. "Run," Daniel commanded. "Run as fast as you can toward the edge of the marsh. Do not look back. Do not stop for anything." The children ran. Daniel watched them go, their small forms disappearing into the yellow mist. Then he turned to face the pursuers. He could not beat a dozen armed warriors in direct combat. He knew that. But he did not need to beat them. He only needed to slow them down. He only needed to give the children time to reach safety. Daniel moved away from the path the children had taken, making noise, leaving obvious tracks. They would follow him instead of the little ones. That was the plan. That was what mattered. The first pursuer found him within minutes. A warrior burst through the mist with a spear raised. Daniel dodged the thrust and kicked the warrior's legs out from under him. The fell into a pool of toxic water and came up screaming, his breathing mask torn away by the impact. Daniel did not wait to see what happened next. He ran deeper into the marsh, leading the pursuit away from the children. More warriors followed, their torches cutting through the mist like angry eyes. Daniel used the terrain against them. He led them through the most dangerous areas, where the ground gave way without warning and sinkholes waited like hungry mouths. One warrior fell into a sinkhole and did not come back up. Another stepped into a pool of something that burned through his boots and left him howling in pain. A third tripped on a root and cracked his mask against a rock. The marsh was doing Daniel's work for him. But they were not stupid. They began to spread out, cutting off his escape routes. A spear flew out of the mist and grazed Daniel's shoulder. He gasped at the pain but kept moving. Another spear caught him in the leg, slicing through the muscle of his calf. He stumbled and nearly fell. The oldest boy's voice reached him through the mist. "We reached the edge. We are safe, is with us." Relief flooded through Daniel. The children were out, they were safe. That was all that mattered. He turned to face his pursuers. 6 warriors remained, spreading out to surround him. Their amber eyes glowed with rage behind their masks. One of them, larger than the others, stepped forward. He wore the bones of many kills around his neck. "You have cost us greatly, soft creature," the large warrior growled. "But the hunt ends here." Daniel looked around. He was injured, exhausted, and outnumbered. The poison had weakened him more than he wanted to admit. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. There was no clever escape this time. No terrain advantage to exploit. Just 6 warriors and 1 wounded human. "Maybe," Daniel said, "maybe the hunt does end here, but I am not going to make it easy." The large warrior laughed. Brave words for a dead creature. They attacked all at once. Daniel fought with everything he had left. He dodged the first strike and caught the second on his forearm. Pain exploded through his body, but he used the momentum to throw one attacker into another. He kicked a third in the knee and heard something crack. The fourth caught him with a blow to the ribs that sent him sprawling. Daniel hit the ground hard. He tried to rise, but his body would not obey. The poison, the wounds, the exhaustion, it was all too much. The large warrior stood over him, spear raised for the killing blow. A sound cut through the mist, a battle cry that Daniel had never heard before but recognized immediately. She came through the mist like a storm, all 4 arms armed with blades. 2 warriors fell before they even knew she was there. A third turned to face her and died with a look of surprise on his face. The large warrior forgot about Daniel and raised his spear to meet her charge. They fought like gods of war and the leader. Their weapons clashed so fast that Daniel could barely follow the movement, but was fresh and furious. She had waited at the edge of the marsh listening to the sounds of pursuit. She had heard Daniel leading the hunt away from the children, and when the children finally emerged from the mist, she had made her choice. She drove into the poison that should have killed her. She breathed air that burned her lungs with every breath, and she came to save the human who had saved her people's children. The leader fell with 4 blades in his chest, pulled them free and turned to the last 2 warriors. They looked at their dead commander, looked at the fury burning in his eyes and ran. Stumbled to Daniel's side. Her scales had turned and her breathing was ragged. The poison was working fast. "Come, we must leave now." Daniel tried to stand, but his leg collapsed under him, caught him with 2 arms and hauled him up. Together they staggered through the marsh. Daniel could feel her strength fading with every step. The poison was killing her. She had minutes at most. They burst out of the mist just as his legs gave out. They collapsed together onto clean grass while 9 children rushed to help them. The oldest boy was already calling for the village healers through a signal fire he had built. Daniel looked up at the sky. The twin suns were rising, painting the clouds in shades of orange and gold. He was alive, was alive. The children were safe. "You came for me," he said too. "You walked into poison to save me." coughed and smiled weakly. You walked into poison first, for children not your own. I could do no less for a warrior who proved his worth. Daniel wanted to say more, but darkness was creeping at the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was 9 small faces looking down at him, amber eyes bright with gratitude and wonder. The human had done the impossible, and the children were going home. Daniel woke to the smell of herbs and the sound of distant singing. He was lying on a soft bed in a room filled with warm light. His wounds had been bandaged and his body felt strange, like he had been floating for a long time and just returned to solid ground. A healer sat beside him, an old female with gentle hands and kind eyes. She noticed him stirring and made a soft clicking sound of approval. The human wakes. Good. We were not certain you would survive. Daniel tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his ribs and leg. How long? 3 days. Your body was full of poison and your wounds were severe. But you are strong, stronger than we expected. Daniel said, "Is she alive?" The healer smiled. "She lives. The poison damaged her lungs badly, but she is a warrior. She refuses to die. She has asked about you many times." Daniel let his head fall back against the pillow. Relief washed through him like cool water. And the children. All 9 have been returned to their families. The village has not seen such celebration in many years. Parents who thought they would never see their young ones again are holding them close. Children who thought they were lost forever are home. A knock came at the door. The healer rose and opened it to reveal standing in the corridor. The old warrior's face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with something Daniel had never seen before. Joy. "May I speak with him?" asked. The healer nodded and stepped aside, entered the room and stood at the foot of Daniel's bed. For a long moment, he simply looked at the human without speaking. "When I first saw you dodge those 12 spears," said finally, "I did not know what to think. An outlander with no weapons, no scales, no claws. A creature from a world we had never visited. You should have died. The trial should have killed you." Daniel said nothing. He waited for the old warrior to continue. "Then you offered to walk into the poison marshes, to save children not your own, to risk death for strangers. I thought you were either mad or lying." Daniel managed a weak smile, maybe a little of both. Did not smile back. His expression remained serious, almost reverent. "The council has met. We have discussed what you have done. We have debated and argued and searched our oldest laws for guidance. In the end, we found no precedent. Nothing in our history matches what you have accomplished." "What does that mean for me?" "It means we must create new history." Stepped forward and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. His grip was firm but gentle. "The council has decided to name you Iran, warrior born of another world. It is the highest honor we can give to one not born of our blood. From this day forward, you are one of us. Your enemies are our enemies. Your battles are our battles. Your home is our home." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything." Amber eyes softened. "You have already spoken through your actions. That is the truest language any warrior knows." Another knock came at the door. This time she walked slowly, still recovering from the poison that had nearly killed her. Bandages covered much of her scales and her breathing was labored, but she was standing. She was alive. Stepped aside to let her approach. She stopped beside Daniel's bed and looked down at him with an expression he could not read. "I was wrong about you," she said. Her voice was rough from the damage to her lungs. "I thought you were a trick, a deception, something too strange to be trusted. And now I know what you are." She reached out and placed something on his chest. It was a piece of carved bone, marked with symbols Daniel did not recognize. "You are a brother. This mark says you have earned a place among us. Any warrior who sees it will know what you have done." Daniel picked up the bone marker. It was warm from her hand. "Thank you." "No," said, "thank you. My sister's children are among the 9 you saved. They are home because of you. They will grow up knowing their true family because a human from another world walked through death to bring them back." Daniel looked at the marker in his hand. He thought about everything that had happened since his shuttle crashed: the trial of spears, the long journey, the poison marshes, the fortress, the chase, charging through toxic air to save his life. He had come to this world by accident. He had survived by luck and training, but staying, he realized, would be a choice, his choice. The healer interrupted his thoughts. "A ship has been detected approaching. It carries human markings. Your people are coming for you." Daniel's heart skipped. A rescue shuttle. His distress beacon must have finally gotten through. After everything, his own kind had found him. His expression shifted. She said nothing, but Daniel could see the question in her eyes. Would he leave? Would he return to his own world and forget about the village that had named him brother? The shuttle landed outside the village that afternoon. Daniel was helped to his feet by And. Together, they walked slowly through the streets toward the gate. Every in the village lined the path, watching the human who had changed everything. The children he had saved ran ahead, laughing and playing, whole and healthy and free. Their parents watched with tears in their eyes. Daniel felt their gratitude like a physical weight, warm and precious and humbling. At the gate, a human woman in a military uniform stood beside the shuttle. Her eyes widened when she saw Daniel supported between 2 alien warriors. "Lieutenant Cole, we received your beacon 3 days ago. We came as fast as we could." "Captain," Daniel said, recognizing her rank insignia, "it is good to see a human face." The captain looked at the crowds of gathered behind him. "Are you in danger here? Do you need extraction?" Daniel turned to look at the village, at the cliff dwellings climbing toward the sky, at the warriors who had tested him and then accepted him, at the children whose lives he had saved, at standing beside him with her hand on his shoulder. "No," he said, "I am not in danger. These people are my friends, my family, but I need to send a message to command." "What kind of message?" Daniel faced the captain directly. "I am requesting a formal first contact team. Diplomats, scientists, trade negotiators. They are a remarkable people and they deserve to be part of the galactic community. I would like to serve as liaison." The captain stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I will pass along your request. It will take time to arrange." "I understand." Daniel smiled. "I have nowhere else to be." The captain returned to her shuttle to send the message. Daniel turned back to face his new people, was beaming with pride, stood at his side, her amber eyes bright. "You are staying," she said. "It was not a question." "I am staying." Daniel looked out at the purple forest, the twin suns, the world that had nearly killed him and then given him a new purpose. "I crashed here by accident, but I think I was meant to find this place, to find you." Placed her hand over his heart. "Among our people there is a saying, the gods do not make accidents. They make warriors walk strange paths to find where they belong." Daniel placed his own hand over hers. "Then I am glad the gods chose this path for me." A celebration began that evening. The entire village came together to feast and dance and sing. Stories were told of the human who dodged 12 spears, of the soft creature who walked through poison to save 9 children, of the outlander who became Oran. Daniel sat among them, surrounded by new brothers and sisters, watching the twin moons rise over the cliff. He had lost everything when his shuttle crashed, his mission, his ship, his old life. But he had gained something greater, a purpose, a people, a home. The little girl he had carried through the marsh climbed into his lap. She looked up at him with bright amber eyes. "Will you stay forever?" Daniel smiled and hugged her close. "Forever is a long time, but I will stay as long as you need me." She smiled back, content with that answer, and fell asleep in his arms while the celebration continued around them. Lieutenant Daniel Cole, the human who wandered into a warrior village and dodged 12 spears, had found his place among the stars, and he was never going to let it go.